Chapter 1. The Cold Equation. Harshvardhan wiped the frost from his goggles, his breath steaming in the thin air of the dragon dominion. It wasn't just cold here, it was heavy. In Pune, winter was a suggestion. Here, in the mountains bordering the Jinghai sector, the cold was a physical weight that pressed against your lungs like a wet wool blanket. He adjusted his scarf, the fabric stiff with ice, and checked his phone. 13:45 p.m. Temperature, -2 degrees Celsius. Battery at 42%, he muttered, swiping through the interface of his own creation. Optimization algorithm is still leaking memory. I need to patch the background refresh. He wasn't looking at a game or social media. He was staring at the raw code of AEGIS, Adaptive Evolutionary Guidance and Intelligence System, a personal assistant project he had been coding since his second year of university. It was supposed to be his ticket to a scholarship. Right now, it was just a buggy app that drained his battery faster than it saved it. Harsh looked up from the screen. He was standing in the middle of Site 9 Reserve Depot, a massive open-air graveyard of military history nestled in a valley surrounded by high fences. It was technically a rail history park, but everyone knew it was just a place where the government dumped the war machines they didn't want to scrap yet. "Hey kid, you done looking at the rust buckets?" A security guard, bundled in a thick green greatcoat, waved from the gatehouse about 200 meters away. "We're closing the inner sector in 10 minutes. Storm warning." "Just 1 minute." Harsh yelled back, his breath forming a cloud. He turned his attention back to the massive beast of iron sitting on the tracks in front of him. It wasn't a sleek maglev or a bullet train. It was a DF-4D armored command unit, a relic from the mid-21st century wars. It was ugly, boxy, and painted in appealing matte black finish. Rivets the size of fists held the armor plates together. It didn't look like a vehicle, it looked like a bunker that had grown wheels. Harsh ran a gloved hand over the freezing metal hull. "Solid steel composite," he whispered, admiring the engineering. "No aerodynamics, just brute force. If I had to pick a place to hide from a nuke, this would be it." He didn't know how right he was. 1400 hours p.m. It didn't happen with a bang. There was no explosion, no siren, no flash of light. It happened with silence. 1 second the sun was hanging pale and weak in the gray sky. The next second it blinked out. It was as if someone had thrown a heavy wool blanket over the entire world. The light didn't fade, it was stolen. The ambient noise of the wind, the distant hum of the city rail, everything vanished into a suffocating vacuum. Harsh blinked, looking up. An eclipse? Today? He tapped his phone. No signal. The screen was the only source of light in the sudden, absolute void. Then came the sound. Crack. It sounded like a gunshot but deeper. It was the sound of the metal tracks contracting. Harsh watched the temperature widget on his phone screen. -2 degrees Celsius. -15 degrees Celsius. -28 degrees Celsius. The numbers weren't ticking down. They were free-falling. What the? Harsh stumbled back, gasping. The air entering his lungs felt like swallowed glass. His moisture-wicking thermal shirt, expensive techwear he bought for the winter, instantly felt like paper. In the distance, by the main gate, the yellow floodlights of the guard post flickered on. They cut through the darkness like lighthouses. Harsh saw the guards running. 3 of them. They were sprinting toward the heavy steel blast doors of the main bunker, abandoning the gatehouse. "Wait!" Harsh screamed, but his voice cracked. The cold had already seized his throat. He took a step toward them, but his legs felt heavy. The wind picked up, howling not with air, but with a biting, supernatural frost. He saw one of the guards stumble. The man fell to his knees. He didn't get up. In the harsh yellow light of the flood lamp, Harsh saw the man stiffen. Frost bloomed over his green coat instantly, turning him into a statue in seconds. Flash freeze. Harsh's mind, usually racing with code and logic, ground to a halt. If I run to the gate, I die. It's 200 meters. Exposure time, 40 seconds. Fatality probability, 100%. He spun around. The DF-4D command unit. The iron beast loomed in the dark, a shadow within a shadow. Harsh scrambled up the rusted maintenance ladder on the side of the train. The metal burned his hands through the gloves. He reached the heavy bulkhead door. Lock. Come on, come on. He kicked the latch. Frozen shut. The cold was gnawing at his skin now. He could feel the capillaries in his nose bursting. His vision was tunneling. I need a lever. I need leverage. He grabbed a loose iron bar lying on the catwalk, part of a broken railing, and jammed it into the wheel of the door. He didn't think about physics. He didn't think about muscle strain. He pulled with the hysterical strength of a dying animal. Screech. The ice shattered. The wheel turned. The heavy steel door groaned open just enough. Harsh threw himself inside and slammed it shut, spinning the locking wheel until his arms gave out. 14:15 p.m. Inside the iron coffin. Darkness. Absolute, crushing darkness. Harsh lay on the metal floor of the command cabin, curled into a ball. He was shivering so violently that his teeth rattled like dice in a cup. The train was unpowered. It was a metal box. And metal conducts cold. He fumbled for his phone. The screen illuminated the cabin with a ghostly blue light. Temperature, internal -10 degrees Celsius. Temperature, external -65 degrees Celsius. It's just insulation. Harsh stammered, his brain sluggish. It will hold, for an hour. Maybe 2. He sat up, leaning against the pilot's console. The dashboard was dead. Needles rested on 0. The heavy glass windshield was already frosting over from the outside, thick patterns of ice sealing him in. He was buried in a tomb of his own choosing. Think, he whispered, slapping his own face to keep the blood flowing. Harsh, think. You're an engineer. You solve problems. System failure. What's the solution? Solution, heat. Resource, none. He tried to turn on the flashlight mode on his phone. The battery indicator flashed red. Battery, 15%. Warning, low temperature. Battery efficiency critical. No. Harsh clutched the phone to his chest, trying to warm it with his body heat. It was his only light. His only connection to sanity. On the screen, the AEGIS code was still running in the background, throwing up error messages. Error, network unreachable. Error, GPS signal lost. Error, hardware temperature critical. You're useless, Harsh whispered, tears freezing in his eyes. I spent 3 years coding you and you can't even tell me the weather. He closed his eyes. The numbness was spreading up his legs. It wasn't painful anymore. It was just quiet. He thought about his apartment in Jinghai. He thought about the unfinished ramen bowl on his desk. He thought about his parents in Pune, their faces blurry in his memory. I'm going to die here. Alone in a museum piece. 14:30 p.m. Something slammed into the side of the train. Clang. The sound rang through the hollow hull like a bell. Harsh jolted awake, his heart hammering against his ribs. The vibration shook the dust off the ceiling. Clang. It came from the door. The door he had just locked. Hello? Harsh croaked. Help. I'm in here. Maybe it was the guards. Maybe they had a vehicle. He scrambled to the small reinforced porthole window in the bulkhead door. He wiped the frost away with his sleeve and looked out into the corridor. It wasn't a guard. Or, it used to be. Illuminated only by the faint, dying glow of the distant floodlights, a figure was bashing itself against the door. It wore the tattered remains of a maintenance uniform. Its skin was gray, blackened by frostbite. But it wasn't frozen solid. It was moving with a jerky, frantic energy. The thing stopped bashing. It turned its head. Through the thick glass, Harsh saw its eyes. They were milky white, glowing with a faint, predatory luminescence. The creature didn't have a weapon. It used its hands. It clawed at the steel door, fingernails tearing off, bones scraping against metal. It opened its mouth and let out a sound that wasn't human, a high-pitched, shivering shriek that sounded like wind blowing through a jagged pipe. A monster. Harsh backed away, tripping over a loose cable. He scrambled backward until his back hit the dead engine console. The cold was killing him from the inside. A monster was trying to kill him from the outside. Fear, primal, white-hot fear, erupted in his chest. But beneath the fear there was something else. A refusal. A glitch in the logic of acceptance. I didn't come here to die. He looked down at his phone. The screen flickered. Battery, 5%. The AGIS app was glitching. The lines of code were scrolling faster than possible, rewriting themselves. System alert. Anomaly detected. Source, user soul. Input, panic/survival instinct. Harsh stared at the screen. He felt weird. A sensation like pins and needles started in the center of his chest, but it wasn't the cold. It was searing hot. Blindingly bright and freezing hot. It flowed down his arm. He could see the shadows in the corner of the cabin stretching. They weren't behaving right. The shadows detached themselves from the floor and crept toward him, but they were rimmed with a stark, pale white light. What is? He didn't speak. He couldn't. The strange essence coiled around his wrist. It didn't hurt. Felt like home. It pulsed in time with his heartbeat, glowing like liquid starlight. The creature outside slammed against the door again. The lock rattled. I need power, Harsh thought. It wasn't a wish. It was a command that bypassed his vocal cords. I need this thing to work. He slammed his hand, still clutching the phone, onto the dead metal dashboard of the train. Wake up, he screamed. But he didn't scream with his voice. He screamed with his soul. The pale white energy poured out of his skin. It surged into the phone first, shattering the glass screen. The shards hovered in midair, held together by a blinding white field. The phone didn't break, it evolved. Metal casing melted and fused with his wrist. BIS kernel access. Granted. Power source, Shadow Sovereign. Hardware status, integrating. Bright, silver-white veins shot out of the phone and bit into the dashboard of the DF4D. They spread like lightning frozen in time, infecting the rusted steel. Thrum. The sound was low, like a heavy bass drop. The analog gauges on the dashboard didn't just light up. They exploded with pure white fire. The needles spun 360 degrees. The dead, rust-clogged diesel engine beneath the floorboards didn't ignite with fuel. It was possessed. Harsh gasped as the train vibrated. The heater vents blasted not hot air, but a strange dry warmth that smelled of ozone and ionized air. On his wrist, the shattered phone projected a hologram into the freezing air. It was a jagged, unstable sphere of white code. A voice, synthetic but echoing with a strange depth, filled the cabin. I am awake, Creator. Harsh stared at the light, his breath trembling. Aegis. Awaiting input. Threat detected at entry point. Hull integrity, 98%. Recommendation, eliminate. Harsh looked at the door. The banging had stopped. The creature outside was scratching, confused by the sudden noise of the engine and the blinding light bleeding through the cracks. Harsh didn't know how to fight. He had never held a gun. He was a student. Eliminate, he thought. Just make it go away. He didn't press a button. He didn't issue a command. He just felt the urge to push. Outside, on the hull of the train, a heavy iron panel, a maintenance hatch cover, ripped itself free from its rusted hinges. It hovered for a split second, wrapped in the same pale white aura, and then launched itself with the force of a cannonball. Splat. The sound of the impact was wet and final. Threat neutralized, AS stated calmly. Energy reserves, 12%. Creator vitality, low. Suggestion, rest. Harsh slumped against the captain's chair. The cabin was warming up rapidly. The blinding white lights of the dashboard bathed him in a spectral glow, chasing away the darkness. Outside, the eternal night raged, but inside the iron beast, a new heart had started beating. Harsh looked at his hand. The white veins faded back into his skin, leaving no mark, just a lingering warmth. Harsh whispered, his eyes closing as exhaustion took him. I'm going to survive this. The train hummed in agreement, its white eyes watching the dark.